Witnesses. You'll remember in the last video that when Peter and John went into Christ's tomb, they found the linens left almost as if a butterfly had emerged from his casing. People don't believe in butterflies because they find empty casings. They believe butterflies exist when they actually see them. And so it was that Jesus began to appear. He did so first to Mary Magdalene. She had run to tell the disciples, and they didn't believe her. Then, as two disciples were walking home to Emmaus after the traumatic events of Christ's death, they suddenly found a stranger walking with them. Luke records that God kept them from recognizing that it was Jesus. The stranger seemed oblivious to the events that had just happened and wondered what these men were discussing so seriously. The two disciples told him the whole story. They expressed how they had hoped Jesus was the Messiah who was coming to rescue Israel. Then they explained how the women who had gone to the tomb found it empty. They just couldn't make sense of it. With that, the still unrecognized Jesus began to explain to them how the scriptures had clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer and die before entering into his glory. Finally, arriving home in Emmaus, these disciples asked if their guest would join them for the night and proceeded to bring out some bread for dinner. And as they sat at the table, Jesus, acting as the host, took the bread, blessed it, and broke it. And suddenly it was like scales fell off their eyes, and these men knew that it was Jesus who had walked with them all the way from Jerusalem. At precisely that moment of recognition, Jesus disappeared. Within the hour, they were back on the road to Jerusalem to tell everyone else. Their hearts were burning. When they got to the disciples, they found that Jesus had already appeared to Peter. And then Jesus was there again with all of them in the room. These fearful men had all fled at his arrest. There had been no chance to say goodbye, and now there would be no need to. Over a span of 40 days, Jesus appeared to over 500 people at different times and different places. You might argue that one or two might have been hallucinating, but not 500 people. No, these were down-to-earth folks who had followed the Lord, ones that Jesus wanted to show without doubt that he was alive. They now knew that he was alive. They were no longer doubtful, embarrassed, or terrified. His followers were now full of renewed confidence. Let's look more closely at two special meetings that Jesus had with Thomas and then with Peter.